do it. Okay, done. So we're now recording. And so we'll also upload the recording to our YouTube page, and then you can watch that later as well. So we'll make sure we provide the recording. We'll also share our PowerPoint slide with everyone as well. So happy to do that. All right, y'all. So we're still letting folks in the room, but we are over 200 people strong here from across the Sunshine State. So I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. First, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who went to a protest today. There's actually a protest happening right now here in Tallahassee. It started at 12 o'clock. And I was just outside with folks before my committee meeting, and folks are out there strong right now. And of course, Orlando had a really strong showing today. I helped behind the scenes to support the Orlando crew. And so really proud of everyone that hosted protests across the Sunshine State today against Elon Musk, against fascism, against the Trump administration's dismantling of the U.S. Constitution, of our government. Of course, our focus today will be on the state legislature, but I will, of course, talk about other issues happening, and we're also grabbing your questions. And so really want to encourage you to ask questions. Our team is going to be pulling questions from the chat and adding it to a doc for me so I can try to answer questions as fast as I can in the time that we have. So why don't we go ahead and get started as we wait for more folks to join us. I do want to remind you that we have closed captionings available. So this is the two options if you're on Facebook or if you are on Zoom, where you can activate the captions options. So I went ahead and just circled it for you on Facebook and then put a little box for Zoom. So if you need that support, please, please, please be sure to activate those systems. We are nothing without our team, so I want to give a really big shout out to our legislative office. We work really hard to show up for our community in every way you can think of, from helping with constituent services, fighting in the legislature, and so much more, working on the state budget to bring dollars back to our district. And so I just want to give a very special thank you to Jasmine, Madison, and our newest team member, Victoria, who joins us as a part-time scheduler and OPS clerk. And so we have a great combination of public university graduates from UF to Florida Gulf Coast University to UCF. So I always love the incredible students who go to our state universities and colleges and the incredible work that they're all doing. So it's great to have y'all with us, and thanks for being part of the team. All right, so with that said, before we get started, as a reminder of who I am and the district that we serve. So my name is Anna V. Eskamani. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm so proud to serve District 42 in the Florida State House Legislature. I am now in my final term of the Florida Legislature. I have been proudly elected 4 times to serve my district with grit and grace. And I am here for my final 2 years in the Florida Legislature. So we're going to make it a good one. And this is our district right here. So I always want to make sure folks know that if you live in the beautiful communities of Orlando, Belle Isle, Winter Park, Edgewood, Maitland, or the historic town of Eatonville, then you are likely in District 42. Of course, if you don't live in this district, I always invite everyone to find their district. So you can actually use this QR code to know exactly where your district is. While I'm here, I'm also going to drop in the chat how you can find your representatives, because I think that's really important. A part of this learning journey is knowing who to find your state representative. So I'm going to toss that in the chat. You can click on this link and be able to identify who represents you in the state legislature, who represents you in the state senate. And that link will also tell you who your state representative is and who your state senator is alongside your member of Congress. So it provides you with a breakdown to those levels of government for you. And I appreciate the good vibes for Mayor of Orlando. Obviously, we're not here to talk about that, but please come join us in a week as we kick off that exciting campaign as well. But that's off topic, so I don't want to talk about it too much here. And it's great to see some longtime friends in the chat and new faces in the chat. Jess Osborne in particular, great to see you here, Jess. What a pleasure. If you are new to advocacy, this is your first ever Zoom about the legislature, about the state legislature, please say hi in the chat. I would love just to make sure that we give you all a shout out. It's so important to get involved, even if it's your first time. We are so excited to have you with us. So thanks for being there. And I see questions already coming in. We're going to grab those questions as much as we can, but look at all these new people. That's so amazing. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for finding us and being a part of this very, very important work. I hope the time you spend with us will be worth it. In fact, I know the time you spend with us will be worth it because the world is on fire right now. Our country is falling apart with the extreme agenda by President Trump and President Elon Musk at this point. And so us being united, us being together, and us thinking about the future is more important than ever. Especially as we build power in state capitals and local governments and continue that effort into Congress, into the White House in the future. And so with that said, I want to make sure that everyone's lines are muted. I don't think you can unmute your lines, but if for some reason you can, please keep yourself muted just so we can stay on task. Okay. So I know we got DC meetings tonight, Orange County DC meetings at 7 o'clock. So I want to try to be as fast as possible with our training tonight. And like I said, we will share these slides for those after the event is over as well. So let's dive into Florida's legislative session. I will talk about the upcoming special elections alongside a few other issues as well. But first, we're going to start with Florida's legislative session. For those who don't know, Florida has what's called a part-time legislature. So we're only in the Capitol for about 90 days of the year. The legislative session is 60 days long and starts on March 4th. But committee weeks have already started. Committee weeks you can think of as the pregame to legislative session. And committee week started back in the end of December. We're in a committee week right now. And I will be back in the district for a week, and then session starts March 4th. Of course, during this time frame, we also had 3 back-to-back special sessions, which I will talk about in more detail soon. And then, of course, I always like to remind folks that Florida has what's called a part-time legislature, which means our salaries are part-time. Unlike members of Congress, my salary is about $28,000. I do work a full-time job on top of this one that I have many things to do with that I got to catch up with. But it's very important to remember that your state representatives are not necessarily full-time in this capacity, right? So that's why your advocacy is so important, whether you are supporting a bill that you like or trying to stop a bill that you don't like. It's important to have that context of what lawmakers do back in their districts, because it obviously can impact how you advocate on your issue and where their perspective might be coming from. Our one constitutional duty as state representatives is to pass what's called a balanced budget. Now, I'll talk more about the budget in a second, but basically what that means is that we every year craft an annual budget that dictates teacher pay, dictates construction projects, that dictates state employees, that dictates our incarceral system, our court system. So every time you pay sales tax and you are giving money to government, part of that might stay local, but a lot of it goes back to the state of Florida and our state coffers. And so those are the dollars, that's your money that we are responsible for reallocating into different state agencies and different needs. So this visual here is a little wordy, but if you've ever seen Schoolhouse Rock before of how a bill becomes a law, the process is very similar in the state legislature. And so it starts with an idea, but remember that idea can come from a person, that idea could come from a lobbyist, that idea could come from anyone, right? But it starts with an idea, and then it gets drafted, it gets filed, and then it gets assigned to committees. And then you try to hear that bill through committees. The bill can always change as it goes through different committees. And then the goal is to get your bill to move through both committees on all committees on both chambers, and the same version needs to pass both chambers. And then it goes to the governor's desk, right? Important to remember that a bill can change as it moves. And of course, sometimes, especially when you're in the minority, sometimes your goal is not to pass a bill, but it's actually stop a bill. But understanding the process of how a bill comes along in Florida is very, very important when we are strategizing the best tactics to try to stop that bill. I'm going to do a screen share shortly with y'all to show you how to actually use these websites. But this is a screenshot of the committees. And again, I'll walk into more detail on this, but the committees are separated by category. So you have the budget committee and then the smaller silos of each category. And then you get into more policy issues. So for example, the Commerce Committee and then the 4 subcommittees that fall under Commerce. So when a bill gets filed, it will start in a subcommittee first and then move into a committee. But it always starts in the smaller subcommittee first. And I see some great questions coming in, including Tina talking about unemployment skyrocketing on the Space Coast. And not to go off topic, but as Elon Musk destroys federal jobs and lays off people, including veterans who've served our country, we are going to see a continued increase of people coming to the unemployment system in Florida, which is broken. And so we're dealing with so many folks who cannot access their unemployment benefits as it is now. And of course, what is happening at the federal level is going to make a bad situation worse for us here in Florida. But we'll talk about that more in a second. And for other questions coming in, I appreciate it. We are grabbing these questions and putting them into our question doc, including Ethan writes, what can the minority do at least to slow down a bill? So great question, Ethan. I'll talk about that soon, but I break it down to delay, amend, destroy. Those are your 3 tactics when you're in the minority trying to stop a bill. Delay, amend, destroy. You try to delay a bill as much as possible by pushing the chairs of committees not to hear legislation. You amend it to try to make it less harmful, and you try to destroy the bill, right? So you try to highlight why the bill is unconstitutional. You file amendments to kind of troll the bill a little bit and to force, very difficult votes on different amendments to make the bill hard to swallow, hard to pass. So those are your tactics when you're trying to stop legislation. And of course, those strategies are going to be unique to each bill of how you do that, but you really try to use as many resources as you have to slow down a bill, to amend a bill, and then highlight why a bill is unconstitutional. So if it does pass, you have a foundation for litigation, which is very, very important. I've actually been called as a witness to different litigations challenging, for example, voter suppression bills. I have been called to be a witness on those court cases, and that is something I'm proud to do, though, of course, I'm very time consuming at that. All right, I see a question about the budget, right? So this is actually an example of Florida state budget as it pertains to this fiscal year. So this was the budget that passed from 2024 to 2025. So remember, Florida state budget starts in July 1st of 2024, and then it ends June 30th of 2025. So the budget we're working on right now would go from 2025 to 2026. We're right now having discussion to potentially override some of the governor's past vetoes. The governor does have veto authority over budget items. So there is also the possibility of that. So I see some really great questions coming into the chat. So let me grab those questions. So when we look at the different budget silos, right? I first want to direct your attention to by the numbers, right? So this is a breakdown of revenue for the state of Florida, where our money comes from. So as you can see, Florida is very reliant on federal dollars. So there's all this chaos happening at the federal level of freezes of federal money, of course, layoffs and terminations happening. Florida is not immune to that. Almost a third of Florida state budget is from the federal government. So what does that look like? That comes from Medicaid reimbursements, That might come from block grants. It might come from transportation dollars. Of course, Florida received, like every state, a lot of money through the CARES Act and ARPA dollars, American Rescue Plan. But we are very reliant on federal dollars. A huge chunk of that comes from healthcare. When the state of Florida, when the federal government did the spending freeze, which I don't call it a freeze, these are cuts to give tax breaks to corporations later. Like that's what the end game is here of the Trump administration. But when they made those freezes across the country, our Medicaid dashboard was not accessible. So, I mean, Florida is not immune to what's happening at the federal level. Now, with that said, you also have what are called state trust funds. So I saw a question about transportation. So Florida's transportation budget really comes out of state trust funds because we have something called the Transportation Trust Fund. And so that bucket of money is mostly generated by the gas tax. So when you buy gas and you pay tax on that gas, it goes into a transportation trust fund. So most of our transportation projects come from that trust fund. I will say that last year, the Florida legislature, I voted no on this, but the Florida legislature passed a bill capping the amount of that money that can be spent on public transportation, which is ridiculous to me because we need to allow flexibility for transportation dollars to be spent on what the need is, not what a preference is. But the legislature put a cap to say that you can't spend more than 20% on non-roads, basically. And this was a bill that was pushed by the road builders because they want to preserve this money for roads. So obviously very important to advocate against that, to allow transportation dollars to be flexible and to be spent on what the need is, not what the preferences of special interest. With that said, general revenue is our largest bucket of money. And the bulk of this comes from sales tax revenue, as Florida has no income tax. So we're very reliant on sales tax. So that's when you shop and buy, that's consumer driven, right? We do have a very small corporate income tax rate in Florida, and only 1% of Florida businesses pay a corporate income tax. So anytime you see legislation that has a corporate tax credit, please remember that small businesses do not benefit from that. Only large corporations can benefit from a corporate tax break. It's always important to remember that because sometimes we want to give tax breaks to small businesses and then we think a corporate tax break will help them, but they don't pay a corporate income tax, right? You can only benefit from a corporate tax break if you pay corporate taxes, right? So very important to remember that. But with that said, this pie chart is how general revenue also gets spent as well. And as you can see, our largest expenses are human services and education. But we're not spending enough in education because we're still not paying teachers enough. Florida continues to rank in the bottom when it comes to teacher pay, and even worse for paraprofessionals, and even our assistant principals are not well paid either. So we have a lot of work to do in boosting teacher pay, which is part of why we're here tonight to talk about how you can actually do that. And yes, sales tax is regressive. Thank you for uplifting that. You're 100% right. I'm the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, so I love talking taxes. And we'll do a screen share to show you how to track committees in a second. So you might have heard that in Florida, we unfortunately face a supermajority Republican legislature. This is the breakdown of the Florida House and the Florida Senate. So right now in the Florida House, there are 120 state House representatives and only 33 Democrats. In the Florida Senate, there are 40 members of the Florida Senate and only 12 Democrats. So I share this with you not to depress people, but to kind of show you the reality of the situation, right? That we are in a super minority. And yes, 2 Democrats did switch after they were elected. And so this is the current number breakdown. So 27.5% of legislation in the Florida House is Democrat, 30% of the Florida Senate. So that means that Republicans do have the votes to override the rules. They have the votes to put on the ballot any constitutional ballot initiative they want to put before the voters. They have the votes to expel members of the legislature. They have a lot of power. And of course, it means that we have to be even more nimble and more strategic and more thoughtful in the fights that we have and the advocacy we do. And actually, Jordy, really great point. 11 Dems in the Senate now because Senator Donnelly Thompson has passed. And so rest in power, Senator Thompson. She's with us in spirit, but that is very accurate. We just lost a legend in the legislature and in public service with Senator Thompson passing away last week. So there are now 11 Democrats in the Florida Senate with a special election to be called in the future. I see a lot of great questions coming in. Are corporations still allowed a tax credit to fund private vouchers? Yes, they are. Rosemary, great question. Yes, they are. What can we change those numbers? We'll talk more about that soon. These are really great questions. Given that Florida is reliant on federal funding and the current administration is looking to cut as much federal funding as they can, do you think Florida should adopt a state tax? If not, why? So it's a great question. In order for Florida to ever, for example, have an income tax, it would require a constitutional amendment. So I don't see that ever happening because I don't see Florida voters supporting that. It's close to impossible to expect Florida voters to vote to tax themselves. It's not going to happen. There, of course, are other revenue generators that would be, I think, more political, palpable, and also really impactful. So, for example, closing corporate tax loopholes through a policy called combined reporting would be very effective. 27 plus states already do it, and it basically would prevent corporations from hiding their revenue in other LLCs. And I'll give you a quick example. Let's just say I have a company, it's called Eskamani, and I make battery chargers. I make these portable batteries. And let's just say that in 2024, I made $1 million in revenue making these products. But there's another company that I started in Delaware called Anna Inc. that owns the royalties to my logo. And so Anna Inc. will invoice me, let's just say $500,000 for royalties. And so now I can tell the state of Florida, oh, I didn't make $1 million. I made $500,000. And then I'm only taxed on that $500,000. So this is a loophole that is a big problem in states like Florida. Combined reporting would close it. But of course, some of our larger corporations that represent international companies, a lot of our companies that are international or multi-state don't want to lose their ability to hide their revenue. And so that's a big issue that would generate upwards of $1 billion of new revenue for Florida. We would not have to create any new taxes. We would just apply the current tax system that we have and potentially generate $1 billion in new revenue. So we have really great policies that we can already pursue. Do driving tolls generate budget revenue? So yes and no. Not necessarily for the state of Florida, right? So if you pay tolls on a state road, then that money will go to the state of Florida to the Transportation Trust Fund. But you also have regional expressway boards, and that revenue may stay local, right? So it just kind of depends. When you pay a toll, it depends on who has jurisdiction over that road. So really great question, but it does depend on the jurisdiction of that road. All right, I'm going to keep, I see a question about, is there a legislative cheat sheet? We can look when calling our reps. Yes, we will talk about this, and there are resources I'll share after the call as well. Yeah, great question, Patty. We have no traffic enforcement on the Turnpike, I-95, or I-75. Why are we sending FHP to assist ICE? I agree with you. It makes no sense. We have some of the most dangerous roads in America, and FHP should be focused on safety of traffic and not assisting federal immigration enforcement. I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right. So we talked about the process a little bit and some of the numbers. I do want to talk more about, real quickly, the power within politics, right? And we're kind of seeing this, like, unfortunately, in our country right now, with the influence of political donors who are often large corporations or just large assholes with Elon Musk. But, this is a very concerning dynamic, right? Where money dictates influence, right? And money gets you a seat in this case, at the Oval Office, right? Incredibly concerning. Um, it's important to know that in Florida, that influence also is in full influence here too. We see it here too, where a corporation writes a bill, gives a check to a lawmaker to hold that bill, they file that bill, and at the end of session, they also get another check, a thank you check, if you will. So unfortunately, that type of transactionalism does happen in these walls. Of course, I always want to be careful to never to talk about lobbyists in a more neutral way, because some of the best advocacy organizations also have lobbyists. So ACLU has a lobbyist, Planned Parenthood has a lobbyist, Equality Florida has lobbyists. So I think sometimes lobbyists get like a bad rap, but there are different types of lobbyists, and um, some of your most trusted organizations have lobbyists, because in order to advocate on legislation, to work on legislation, you have to legally be a registered lobbyist. So sometimes that L word kind of gets a negative connotation, but there's a lot of fantastic public interest lobbyists here in the Capitol that do really good work for these everyday issues. There's lobbyists that work in-house for corporations. There's lobbyists that do contracts, so they represent many actors at the same time. But at the end of the day, lobbyists have to be registered with the state, so we can see in the Florida House who lobbies for what, which I can show you how to check that soon. But that is a part of the process in politics. And you also have different associations. So you might have the Florida Realtors, you might have the Farm Bureau, the Florida Chamber, which always give me like an F minus, which I'm proud of. But there's different associations that represent the social workers, so they might come to Tallahassee and engage at that level as well. You have your constituents. So I work with constituents. I had a call this morning at 9 a.m. with constituents who all have children with autism, and we're working on legislation right now for elopement prevention at our schools. So I had a meeting with a group of phenomenal parents who shared with me their experiences when it comes to navigating the school system with their children who are prone to elope. One of those constituents is also executive director of a nonprofit. So you have nonprofits that advocate for different issues. They might give you data. United Way does a lot of work in giving us data to see the Alice report, what the poverty rates are in our communities and so forth. And then state agencies. So state agencies, this actually, I'll show you. I think I have a photo. Okay, so this is a lot of words, but it is it is Florida state government in a slide. And so you have executive agencies down here. Each one of these agencies has a governmental affairs team that interacts with the legislature. So you have Agency for Healthcare Administration, ACA, Department of Children and Families, DCF, Department of Health. Department of Health also has county health departments, Department of Elder Affairs, FWC. It goes on and on. This is all technically the executive branch, not the legislative branch. It is in the executive branch. But of course, you can see the legislature does have joint committees. We have the Public Service Commission, which is the oversight of for-profit utility companies in Florida. We have the Commission on Ethics. This is the layers of the judiciary. And then, of course, the executive and the Florida cabinet, and then all the other arms of the Florida cabinet. So this is very important to understand, because, again, when you are trying to impact legislation or impact rulemaking or policy or what have you, you have to know the power landscape, right? And honestly, I know this is a state example, but this is what Elon Musk is doing at the federal level, right? He is dismantling federal agencies. And so he's looking at the map of how government operates, how government interacts with the public, and he's dismantling it because he doesn't want government to actually function, right? The less government, the less regulation, the more profits he can make, and the more powerful he becomes. And so it's important to understand these systems. And I do have a link to this graphic. I'll share the slide with everyone post this presentation. But I think I found this on Opaga's website. But yes, super, super important. All right, let's keep moving forward. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick screen share now to show y'all a few things: how to contact and look up your member, how to track committees, how to find, track, and read a bill, the budget process, and where to watch legislature live. So I'm gonna try to do this in like 10 minutes. It's gonna be a fast 10 minutes, so stick with me if you can. And so let me go ahead and I'm gonna use this same screen. Y'all let me know if you can see this because I think it's still shared. Give me a thumbs up or something if you see myfloridahouse.gov as your website right now. Just want to make sure. Yes, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Okay, cool. So there are two websites to have known to you, right? So one is flhouse.gov, the other is flsenate.gov. I'm going to focus more on this one because I know it better, but they're pretty much the same in the buttons that they have, in the searches that they have, but I'm going to use the Florida House one because that's what I'm more familiar with. So let me make sure I don't miss any points here. Okay. So my first goal with the screen share is to teach you how to look up your lawmaker. All right. So I dropped this link in the chat earlier. I'm going to go ahead and drop it again. And again, we will email this out to everyone so you can have these resources easily accessible to you. But when you want to look up your lawmaker, you would do it through the final elected officials in Florida. I'm going to go ahead and just drop an address in. I won't tell you what address it is, but you can see that I am the representative for that district, right? And so you can also see your state Senate district and your U.S. House district. So you can click on it, it'll bring you there. And of course, each one of us have 2 U.S. senators right now. And so you can see our Capitol office, our district office, our phone numbers, and so forth. But let's just say you want to learn more about that representative, you click on their website. And so this is pretty much our landing page, right? Where you can see who our staff is. You can see the committees that we serve on. I serve on a lot of committees right now. Biographical information, affiliations, highlights, and so forth. If you want to look at the bills that your member has sponsored, click on sponsor bills, and you can look at these bills, which I will show you how to read a bill soon. But then, of course, if you want to contact a lawmaker, you click contact member. So there's a question earlier about, a cheat sheet on how to contact lawmakers, which I definitely will provide. But when you fill out this form, it goes right to our inbox. And if you ever want to email your lawmaker directly, our emails are very simple. It is firstname.lastname@flhouse.gov. For the Senate, it's lastname.firstname@flsenate.gov. So you can still use these websites, but please know that to contact us, it's this form goes right to our inbox, and you can also email us directly or call us as well. But you can fill out your thoughts here, and it will go straight to our office. With that said, to keep moving forward, we want to talk about how to track committees. So if you click here, you'll see all your committee buttons, right? And let's just click on one of these committees. I'm going to go down to, let's do State Affairs. So I clicked on Information and Technology, Budget and Policy Subcommittee. So when you go into a committee page, you're going to see the chair, the vice chair, and the Democratic ranking member. Every committee in the Florida House is chaired and vice chaired by a Republican. They do not give us any type of leadership position in that regard, but you do have a Democratic ranking member. So let's just say you're trying to support a bill in this committee, or you want to stop a bill in this committee. You first would want to contact the chair and vice chair to say, don't agenda the bill or do agenda the bill. And obviously there are amazing organizations like Equality Florida that will do action alerts, but that's the point of an action alert. When you're contacting a lawmaker that isn't your lawmaker, the goal usually is to stop a bill or to hear a bill, right? So please agenda the climate change bill that I care about, or don't agenda the abortion ban. Depending on what issue you're advocating for, it'll be a different ask. But these are your first kind of focuses, right, of who you're trying to engage with in that regard. And then, of course, if the bill does get heard, these are the lawmakers who would vote on your bill, and you want to influence them, yes or no, if the bill is going to come before them. So very important to understand those systems. When you want to search for a bill, so you can easily click on bills up here, and it will give you every bill that's been filed so far. You can actually, choose just House bills, Senate bills, both. You can search by bill number. You can search by bill text. So it's really up to you how you want to search for legislation. To read a bill is actually easier than you might think. So I want to see if I can find a bill real quick. Okay, so that's the different session. All right, so what I'm doing right now is I'm checking a different session, right? So these are all, so you can look at bills as far back as 1998 here, but I want to try to find a bill from the past. Let me see if I can find it that I can show y'all. Okay, yeah, so HB 7. Okay, so this was one of the abortion bans. There's been so many, but this is one of the recent abortion bans that passed Florida. So if you look at this bill, you want to try to read the bill, you want to look at the most recent version of a bill. So these were all amendments that were filed but failed by Democrats trying to stop the bill or change the bill. But if you click on the actual bill text, the secret to reading a bill in Florida is this coding system, right? So words that are stricken are words that are deleted, and words that are underlined are additions. So when you look at a bill, anything that is plain text, there's nothing that looks different. That means that it's text that's in Florida law right now. It's not new and it's not being removed. Anything that's underlined is new. And then if you find anything that's stricken right here, that means that they want to delete this language from current Florida law. So once you understand that coding system, it lets you better understand and read a bill. And again, I know I'm getting to the weeds a little bit, but I think that's important for any advocate because you don't always want to read a headline. You really want to be able to read a bill to understand what it does and doesn't do. So with that said, the budget process, a lot more complicated. So Florida has a very large state budget, as we talked about. Our state budget right now is about $117 billion, okay, with a B. And so this is the budget committee on the House side. The Senate also has an appropriations committee. And then, of course, you have all these subcommittees underneath it. So basically, when the budget is worked on, it starts at that subcommittee level and is divided by specific silos. And then eventually, the main budget committee works on a large budget that funds the entire state. The House and the Senate pass their draft budgets, and then you go into what's called conferencing, where the two chambers debate their budgets and one final budget is produced. Why does this matter? Well, we just talked about funding for ICE. So the state of Florida is allocating $500 million to immigration enforcement, a federal responsibility that we're going to spend your taxpayers on. Governor DeSantis has spent our money on trafficking asylum seekers from the Mexican-American border to Martha's Vineyard. The state budget has been used to fight frivolous lawsuits for unconstitutional laws, from banning books to banning drag shows. So the budget's a very important piece of information because it dictates our values. When we talk about teacher pay, it's this committee that ultimately decides what is allocated dollars versus not. And right now, Florida continues to pump money, billions of dollars into private voucher schools, while teachers right now, the per pupil spending recommendation by the governor is to only increase it by $222, which is not enough money to give our teachers a raise that will allow them to live where they teach, and it will not address the compression that our veteran teachers have faced due to being underfunded compared to new teachers. So the budget process is really important, and it's something that folks gotta really be a part of, right? And then finally, before I go back to the slideshow, I want to remind y'all that if you're a new person to this work, you can actually watch uh, live committee hearings at the Florida channel. And we have a video library here as well. You can watch past committee hearings. I just had a committee hearing. I was just in this committee meeting a few minutes ago. So you can watch anything that's happened on the House floor or in committee at the Florida channel, online or on your television. And if you're a nerd like me or just want to learn more about state government, start at the Florida channel. It's a great way to be plugged in and know what's happening. Of course, the Florida channel is basically like your state version of C-SPAN. Okay, so let's go back to my presentation now that we've done that screen share. So some bills that have already been filed. These are some really just problematic bills, right? I don't have time to go through every problematic bill that's already been filed, and bills are still being filed as we speak. And so more to come. So brace for impact. But some of the bills that have already been filed include House Bill 293. This basically would make would legalize Governor DeSantis and his actions from last year, where he spent public money to organize and campaign against Amendment 4. So it basically would make that process more legal, if you will, by creating an Office of Faith and Community within the executive office of the governor. It will allow him to funnel public money to campaign on political issues that he sees fit. So further empowering the executive branch, giving him a slush fund to do political campaigns with. HB 503, this makes it more difficult for local governments to generate revenue through local business tax, which would then force local governments to raise taxes on their residents, making them look like the bad guys. You'll see a big pattern in Florida where state government, though they preach small government, are consistently preempting local governments and making it harder for local governments to provide basic resources, whether it's police and fire, whether it's water conservation, whether it's construction projects. There's always an effort to preempt local governments, make it harder for local governments to do their job. So the state of Florida can potentially eliminate cities and counties, consolidating their power over local governments. HB 541. This would allow business to pay what's called a sub minimum wage. So this is basically an effort to not follow the state constitution or federal law in providing a minimum wage and to provide what's called a sub minimum wage. So it's trying to pay people a lot less for the same type of labor that they're doing right now by being paid at a minimum wage. And then if you care about reducing plastic waste, House Bill 565 would be a state preemption on every type of plastic, single-use plastic. So if your local government wanted to restrict the use of styrofoam, for example, this bill would not allow them to do that. So it ties the hands of local governments and increases plastic waste in our communities. A few other examples, Senate Bill 700. This is called the Farm Bill because it's a agricultural package, and though it does have a lot of non-political pieces to it, it has a lot of bad policies, including not allowing for plant-based milk alternatives to be called milk. So you can't call oat milk. I mean, again, like, I can't believe we're even debating this stuff, but this is literally legislation that's been filed. It also makes it harder for local governments to set requirements for electric vehicle charging stations. House Bill 443 basically limits the ability for local school districts to regulate charter schools. HB 477, this is the chemtrails bill. So this bill was actually already heard in the Senate, and it feeds into Marjorie Taylor Greene's conspiracy that the government's controlling the weather. So that bill already had a hearing and passed its first committee in the Senate. House Bill 585. This is basically a liability shield for industrial polluters. So it reduces our ability to hold industrial polluters accountable in civil court. And then I want to also highlight a bill that passed in committee last week. This legislation that would ban a state employee or even put restrictions at a school dormitory from flying pride flags or Black Lives Matter flags. You basically couldn't put up a symbol of your identity at your office in your window. You would not be allowed to do that. So that bill passed its first committee stop in the Senate this week as well. And I will be grabbing questions in a second. I just want to get through these slides first, and then I'll grab questions. I appreciate y'all's patience with me. So I know I just highlighted a few like kind of negative bills, but I do want you to know there are positive bills as well. And so we have, as I mentioned already, I filed legislation to support our kids who have a propensity to elope, to protect those children. We have really good consumer protection bills. There are bipartisan bills on property insurance reform that we're debating. We have good environmental protection bills filed. You know, we have a bipartisan energy around addressing the wait list for agency or persons with disabilities. So there are some really positive policies. I won't have time to talk about all those bills, but I do want to make sure you know that not everything is always negative in legislature. We are working on as much as we can proactive agenda as well, because again, we can't always be against something. We also have to be proactive and positive towards something. And it's really important to be inspirational towards the future we want versus just always being negative all the time. Okay, so let's talk about immigration and the back-to-back special sessions. So we just had 3 back-to-back legislative special sessions that attacked and targeted our immigrant community, including our dreamers, who are young people and actually adults as well, because dreamers have been in our country for forever. But these are individuals who came to the United States at no choice of their own as children. The only country they know as home is the United States. And 10 years ago, the Florida legislature and the governor granted them in-state tuition, meaning that they still had to pay out of pocket for college, but they were able to pay at an in-state tuition level. And of course, this was a bipartisan bill that passed a Republican legislature 10 years ago. And part of DeSantis's anti-immigrant agenda eliminated in-state tuition for our dreamers. So incredibly problematic. Leaves these kids with no clear direction. And we are working to fundraise to support them. And there are amazing organizations who are also holding the line on immigrant rights and immigrant community support that we will amplify and have amplified and want to, of course, make sure you know about them. One is Hope Community Center, which I see folks discussing in the chat. There's also Orlando Center for Justice. Orlando Center for Justice provides pro bono legal aid support to the immigrant community. And I will drop that in the chat as well, so you have it. But there's a lot of amazing organizations. We actually hosted immigrant rights workshops in our district with more to come. But it's really important to support those organizations on the ground doing this work, who need your time, your dollars, and of course, just your support during very, very difficult times. The back-to-back special sessions were a highlight of tension between the executive branch and the legislative branch, which is tension that will likely continue. But of course, a compromise bill was made that I voted no on because it is terrible. This new bill it attempts to force the entanglement of local law enforcement with federal immigration enforcement, eroding the trust that immigrant communities will have with law enforcement. It also creates new criminal offenses, some of which are clearly unconstitutional. Of course, it allocates money towards this type of state-based enforcement, and that's public money, that's our tax dollars. And of course, it ends in-state tuition for our dreamers. And yes, Joanne, it creates a new criminal offense for individuals already in Florida as well. So yes, it is an incredibly problematic piece of legislation and unfortunately now law. And today the governor just had his first task force meeting where they are pushing for local law enforcement to engage on immigration enforcement. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving forward because I know it's almost 7. I'm going to lose folks at 7. So I want to cover what I have and then take questions after that, okay? So I had a map here, but it's not showing up right now. Let me see if I can do something about that. There we go. Let me try that again. All right. So I see folks in the chat talking about the 2 special elections at the congressional level. Oh, I'm sorry. Still not working. Okay, I'm just gonna zoom in. All right. So real quick, we have municipal elections I don't want you to forget about, right? Because local elections matter. And so if you get a second, check to make sure you don't have a local election happening in your neighborhood. We have in Central Florida multiple elections taking place this spring and March, and we have local elections taking place in November. So double check to make sure you don't have an election happening in your backyard, because local elections matter. I always like to remind people that if you despise people like Congressman Matt Gaetz, former Congressman Matt Gaetz, he started the state house. So be thoughtful to the pipeline, right? A local government to higher government. But of course, the special elections, we have a special elections in 2 congressional districts, right? Congressional District 1 and Congressional District 6. So the tip of Florida, the Panhandle, and then kind of Volusia County, stretching into other parts of like North Central Florida. Let me go back to presenting this. So these elections are on April 1st, and I will say that these are pretty hard districts for anyone for Democrats in general, because they predominantly are red districts. This is the product of what's called gerrymandering, where the legislature draws seats to be intentionally majority Republican. So it's very difficult for Democrats to win. I will say, though, that it's important to be engaged with any elections happening near you, because even demonstrating close outcomes is better than not. And so really want to encourage folks to, engage at every level you can with what your capacity is. I know there's phone banks happening. I know there's canvassing happening. This is not in my district, so I'm not in those areas, but really important to see if you have a special election taking place in your backyard, and of course get involved as much as you can in supporting those individuals running in those seats. And so really want to amplify. And I see folks in the chat. Volusia County got a shot. I love the positive energy. And yes, Randy Fine should be nowhere near Congress. And unfortunately, he doesn't even live in the district, but he can run, which is wild to me. But yes, very, very important to be engaged at those levels as well. And then what do these candidates need the most? So I would say that everything and above is fantastic, but if you got time, candidates need help with communicating to their voters. So whether that is knocking on doors, whether that is making phone calls, that direct voter contact is always what is most important. And by the way, I'm talking a little bit more vaguely because I am in the state capitol right now, so I want to be sensitive. I really can't talk too much about campaigning when I'm in the state capitol, but generically speaking, that is what candidates would need. And for some reason, my graphics are not working right now. It's kind of annoying. But so we have a lot of events that I want to plug you into. And sorry, I was trying to fix that graphic, but just ignore me. But Team Anna is busy, and Team Anna has a lot of great events for you to get plugged into that I want to make sure are amplified for you. And so these are 4 different volunteer re-engagement events that we have. Each one of them are virtual. But if you live in any 4 of these regions, we really encourage you to join us. I will drop them in the chat as well, unless a team member grabbed them, but I'm happy to do it just in case. But basically, we are organizing at a hyperlocal level to engage with our constituents and really lift up the importance of organizing at a hyperlocal level and doing things like voter registration, vote by mail renewal, alongside petition gathering. So our team has been very engaged in supporting both Medicaid expansion and the right to clean water, which are 2 important ballot initiatives that are hopefully, with enough signatures collected, would be on our ballot next November. And so the link that our team just dropped for all of our events you can find. Yes, thank you, Maddie. That was the phone banking link. Um, will be dropped in the chat. Would you encourage teens interested in learning about government to apply for the PAGE program? 100%. Unfortunately, the PAGE program gets booked very quickly, but I always encourage it. And you just got to be fast to apply. And it's not the only way. We also have internship opportunities at the legislative office as well. So you can always join your local legislator at the district office or in the Capitol if the PAGE mentor program is always booked up. Thank you, Ethan. I appreciate you. And we're almost wrapped up with these slides. Hopefully this next slide works. Okay. So a few other events I want to make sure are on your radar, and then I'll start taking Q&A. So we have in-person town halls coming up in the Orlando area next week, including our Policies of the People town hall in Eatonville. We also have our organizing and legislative town hall the next day. So we want to make sure, I'm sorry, this one's first, then this one. So make sure these are both on your radar. We also have the February Dems Mingle that I'll be the guest speaker on this Friday night. So you're welcome to join us in College Park for that event. And then this is really important. This is a Know Your Rights workshop hosted by both the Miami-Dade Democratic Party and the Orange County Democratic Party. And it will be available in English and Spanish. And then there's going to be a Creole-led session held on March 4th. So really important to know your rights. And I actually have a slide about this too. But I just want you to know that there's a lot of great events for you to be a part of. And we need you. We need you to get plugged in all these ways and more. If I can go back to the previous slide, like these 4 events, these are going to be hosted by Pew Power for Florida, an organization that I started about 4 years ago. And we're going to be strategizing with you on how to reach new voters, how to talk to new constituents, how to engage at a more meaningful level. Protesting is very important, but we can't just protest. We also have to build power in our communities and make sure that folks hold elected officials accountable and know how to do that. And so these are all events to help you get plugged in as well. So I want to make sure they're also on your radar. Finally, Know Your Rights. So we hosted a Know Your Rights workshop with the Haitian community about 2 weeks ago. We participated in another workshop focused on our Spanish speakers last weekend. And as I just noted, more events are coming. Really important to know your rights and to share that with others. And so this is specific to immigrant community members. And so you can watch, if you're interested, some really great videos at wehaverights.us. Again, that's wehaverights.us. This website provides videos in multiple languages to help you navigate a situation when it comes to immigration and immigration enforcement. I also encourage folks to have what's called a red card. I actually ordered about 1,000 red cards to pass out at our community events. And these are items that are basically tiny little business cards that have English on one side and then your first language on the other side. And it basically says, I know my rights are, I'm not required to speak to you right now. I will not speak until I have my lawyer. And if English is not your first language or you're hesitant to say something because you don't want to say the wrong thing, you can actually give that officer this card and it will allow you to proceed knowing your rights. But with that said, stay calm, don't run, argue, resist, or obstruct the officer, even if you believe your rights are being violated. It's really important to not make a bad situation worse. Don't lie about your status or provide false documents that could be used against you. And of course, you have the right to remain silent. Do not have to discuss your immigration or citizenship status with anyone, right? Of course, anything you tell an officer can later be used against you in immigration court, just like in any other dynamic with law enforcement. And if you're not a U.S. citizen and an immigration agent requests your immigration papers, you must show them if you have them with you. If an immigration agent asks if they can search you, you have the right to say no. Remember, agents do not have the right to search you or your belongings without your consent or probable cause, which would require a judicial warrant, not just an administrative warrant. And of course, please learn more at wehaverights.us. And we will be ordering. We have red cards. We also print red cards online. Let me see if I can actually just grab that link for you real quick. Hold on. Just going to grab a printable example. So let me see. Okay, so I think this website, you can find red cards to order and print. So I just dropped that in the chat. And I'll make sure we email that out to folks as well, because that is a really great resource for everyone to have. So we'll do that real quick. You're welcome. Okay, let's keep moving forward because it's almost past 7. Okay, so ways to get involved, and then I'll take your questions. We have like pages of questions, so I'm gonna do my best to do everything I can. All right, so ways to get involved. Okay, so first of all, to everyone who protested, thank you. Like, your voice matters. Showing united opposition is important. A lot of folks felt like they were alone following the election, and I think now there's been a lot more acts of solidarity and clear backlash to what Trump and Musk are doing, where people are fired up and want to do something about it, right? And so, in addition to making sure your opposition is known, it's really important to also engage at the local level in your state capital, to engage in community outreach, to contact lawmakers, and to do voter registration. So when it comes to local meetings and events, from legislative delegation meetings to constituent meetings to rallies and public hearings, get involved and show up. There are a lot of amazing organizations that also host Days at the Capitol, from Equality Florida to Planned Parenthood to Clio Institute, which is an environmental group. So if you're part of the Team on a Network, we will share these opportunities with you, especially on our social media and in our weekly volunteer newsletter. But consider coming to the state capitol and engaging with us, with your lawmakers, with an organization that you align with. It'll make the experience a little less stressful, but also give you hands-on experience to be an advocate at the state level. Any organizations pushing for workers' rights and economic equity, absolutely. That'll be our unions. And so we have the Working Families Policy Corps, who will come up to Tallahassee and advocate for workers' rights. They push back against preemption and these really bad wage bills that are trying to create sub-minimum wages and pay people less. And so our labor unions, and you have Jobs with Justice, a lot of amazing partners who are leading the fight on economic policy that are fantastic to be a part of. Yes, I see Care Florida, Habitat the Capitol, Democrat Women's Club. I see Dr. Yvette is here. And so Democrat Women's Club is up in Tallahassee all the time as well. Claudia is tossing. Yeah, actually, this is really great. If you have, for anyone who's in the chat, if you have your sign up link for Day at the Capitol, for your Day at the Capitol, please toss that in the chat so others can see and join you. I think that would be fantastic. So please, if you have a Day of the Capitol coming up, feel free to drop in the chat or email us and we'll get it out to people, but I don't want to miss anything, right? So please, please, please feel free to engage in that way with our audience here. And contact lawmakers. So I already taught y'all how to find your lawmakers, and really important, again, to contact your lawmakers, not just those who represent you, but if you are fighting for or against a bill, to advocate on that issue in a meaningful way. And so to contact the chair and vice chair to say, don't agenda the bill or do agenda the bill, right? Really important to be engaged at that level. And I don't just email them, follow them online, post at them, comment at them, show up at their district office. There was a protest a few days ago outside a legislator's office here in the Orlando area to protect our dreamers, and that got a lot of media attention. So, the goal too is to elevate awareness of what lawmakers are doing and not doing. And so to be very strategic in how you spend your energy in that regard is impactful and important. And it just elevates the advocacy conversation to say, well, this representative voted no, well, this one voted yes. And it just lets the public be more aware of who's actually working for them versus working against you. So that's very important. Okay, community outreach. So we've had amazing attendance tonight. But I will tell y'all, we had over 700 RSVPs. and about 50% of folks showed up, which is still really impressive. And I'm really glad that you showed up. But people are busy. People got so much on their plate every day. And so not every person is as politically engaged as we are or wants to be as politically engaged as we are. So we have to reach new people and to inspire them to get civically engaged and to rebuild trust with government, right? Because that's one of the challenges we have is a lot of people, especially working class folks, don't feel like politics and any political party is serving them. And to some degree, they're right. I mean, it's been very embarrassing to see the lack of action on some really important issues from all political sides of the equation. And then, of course, a lot of the work that was accomplished is now going to get pulled back. And so a lot of folks feel disenchanted by the political system, but oftentimes also because they don't know local government. They don't know who their state reps are. They just hear what happens out of DC and not really the local level. And so it's important to meet folks where they're at, belly to belly, to have those conversations, but to, of course, help them see the value in their voice, that we need their advocacy. We need them to vote at a local level, not just nationally. And so a more informed voter is a better voter. So to volunteer to knock on doors, to volunteer to make phone calls, we talked about that a little bit already, to really engage at that face-to-face level, to meet people that are outside your comfort zone and to meet folks that, again, have never engaged in politics. So because you knocked on their door and talked to them about a bill you care about or a candidate you love or an issue that inspires you, you've now built their political efficacy, right? And again, the more informed people are, the better voters they will be. So to help at that level as well. And in that same vein, voter registration. So our team does voter registration at UCF, at FSU, at college campuses across Florida, at community events. So come join us to do voter registration. It's really important to get out the vote. It's really important to register new young voters to vote. We're partnering with high schools where we can, and you can find all those events and more at our Mobilize page, mobilize.us/Anna for Florida. But we'll also email those events out. And if you attend one of our volunteer re-engagement events, then we will also plug you into all these amazing voter registration opportunities that we have at farmers markets, at outside concerts. Like we're doing it all the time, and we can't do it without volunteers. So, and by the way, Florida has made the voter registration process very difficult, which is why we need more people to do it. Because the reality is that if voting wasn't important, then why would the majority party work so hard to take it away from us, right? And so it's important for us to engage at that fundamental level of organizing as well. All right, so that wraps up the slides that I had. I am going to now start taking your questions, and we have a lot of questions that have come in, so I'm just going to start. Our amazing team has been organizing our questions in a doc for me. This doc is now 6 pages long. So let's start from the top. And we're gonna wrap up in about 20 minutes. So if you stick with me, I will grab as many questions as I can. I'm also gonna watch the chat for new questions or follow-up questions, but let me try to get through these as much as I can. So one question, any way to legally challenge FHP being given ICE initiative directives? How soon can they call him to court? Any way to challenge ICE going into churches and schools? Thanks. So lawsuits are being pursued and being filed at different levels. Unfortunately, step one to a lawsuit is a plaintiff. So I always hear folks say, let's sue them. But our courts have become so conservative that unless there is a direct impact that you have that you can prove to a court might say that you don't have standing. So what's likely going to happen, I hate to say it, what's likely to happen is somebody is going to be racially profiled and pulled over for that reason and detained by ICE. And that person is going to sue based on their constitutional rights being broken by the racial profiling. And so it sucks, but for some of these litigations, the first step is that we have to have someone with standing, and that person also has to be willing to be subject to engage in lawsuits. And the right knows that. And so that's why they've made it harder for plaintiffs to be identified. And of course, they've intimidated people who engage at that advocacy level. But that is what it's going to take. And I have no doubt that will happen. And there will be lawsuits filed. There already have been lawsuits filed challenging many of the federal policies coming out of Elon Musk's mouth. And with that said, we lawyers don't want to file something unless it's strong. So this FHP situation just happened a week ago. So it's going to take a little bit of time if there is a path for litigation for a strong lawsuit to be filed. And the other challenge is that lawsuits also cost money. Nothing is free. There's filing fees, there's legal fees. Sometimes there's nonprofits that are raising to pay for these things, but that's why supporting organizations like the ACLU is so important, because they're funding a lot of these lawsuits, because I mean they do cost money as well. And then same question from Danielle. Do we need to sue towards any executive orders that affect Florida federal budget specifically? So again, you'd want to have a plaintiff. So you'd have to prove, like if you wanted to sue, you personally, you have to prove that you are directly impacted by that executive order, and then find a lawyer that agrees with you and then file that lawsuit. So there are some moving pieces here, but I will say, if folks are interested in being plaintiffs, then definitely contact the ACLU, contact Southern Poverty Law Center. If it's a First Amendment violation, contact FIRE. And I mean, you can always contact, us, and we can kind of direct you in the right way. But rest assured that if there can be a lawsuit, people are working on it. It's just a very time-consuming process, an expensive process, and you want to make sure it's done right. As someone who's been involved in lawsuits, like I said earlier, I have been a witness in litigation challenging unconstitutional laws. It is, it's days of prep. Like it's a really intense process. So it's not something that can be done overnight, but kudos to the states, the blue states that have filed lawsuits, because they're working hard. And by the way, this is why attorney generals are so important. People often don't vote for attorney general because they don't know what that position is, but it's a statewide position that's so important, because an attorney general, basically could be helping us. If we had a good attorney general, they could be defending constituents on all these issues and more by saying that the state of Florida has standing. But because we have a conservative attorney general, actually DeSantis's chief of staff just became our attorney general. They're going to be defending DeSantis, defending Trump, and not fighting back. So attorney generals are a very important part of this equation. Okay. I'm disabled with multiple chronic illnesses. My children have many of the same illnesses and are currently on a 504 plan and an IEP. I'm worried about so many things, but specifically wanted to ask you about how it would work if the Department of Education is dismantled. That's a really great question. And we've actually talked about this at a previous virtual event a few weeks ago. It would be devastating. The federal government is there to provide guardrails for many different communities of people, including people with disabilities. And if it isn't there, there really isn't a clear protection or federal requirements for things like IEPs. And obviously IEPs are not even perfect. Like there's still need for improvement with IEPs under current law. But of course, if you lose the Department of Education, it's a ripple effect for all these institutions that focus on vulnerable communities. Also, of course, accreditation for colleges, universities are impacted. Federal programs for FAFSA, student loans are impacted. So everything is impacted for sure. So I appreciate you uplifting that question. And if there's anything we can do to support you and your family, please let us know. How much of money specifically for educational vouchers comes from federal money? Actually, in Florida, it is state money. It is your state tax dollars. So in Florida, it is literally public state dollars that goes to voucher schools. Of course, the federal government wants to also move federal dollars, but in Florida, it's your state tax dollars. If they shut down Department of Education, what do you speculate the state of Florida will do? Nothing to be helpful. I mean, here's the problem, right? Is like the federal Department of Education has challenged the state Department of Education on discriminatory practices. And so if you don't have a federal DOE, the state of Florida, I mean, I do not trust the state of Florida to help, right? Like they're gonna, if anything, consent to the dismantling of the federal DOE. Obviously, I would hope that the state of Florida would want to champion the needs of our students with disabilities, but I really do not have a lot of hope in that. Okay, I'm moving through. Are Republicans starting to get nervous over this new agenda, or are they fine with losing our democracy? Have any shown concern Elon Musk? None have shown any support of Elon Musk. In fact, I would say there are more bills filed this session to try to get Elon Musk's attention. Actually, there is a Florida. Okay, so there's a bill filed that comes from the what's called the Cicero Institute, and the Cicero Institute is like a right-wing think tank. It is not uh an organization that I align with. They're the ones who push for the ban on individuals sleeping outside or homeless. So they have a bill to basically attempt to downsize state government and sunset rules with state government and so forth. It's now being branded as the state Doge bill. So there's been more an effort for Republicans to get Elon Musk's attention than to challenge him. So that's been very, very concerning. Okay, so now we have a bunch of like legislative budget questions that I'm gonna try to tackle quickly. And then I'm gonna check the chat for additional questions that I might have missed. So we have if a bill needs to be amended, can a bill pass the committee before the amendments are made? No. Wait, let me read that again. Sorry. If a bill needs to be amended, can a bill pass the committee before? Okay, actually, I guess so. So basically, you can't amend a bill until it has a committee hearing. So let's just say that you want to, a bill is filed and you want changes to it. It has to be heard in a committee before changes can be made. So I think that answers your question. So technically, a bill could pass a committee with amendments promised, but long story short, you cannot amend a bill unless it is heard in a committee. Okay. How can we advocate for or against bills that we know our representative senators has the same view on? Is this when we reach out to the committee members? Yes. I think I already answered this question, so I don't want to belabor the point. But yes, you definitely contact your lawmaker, but also feel free to contact lawmakers that serve in leadership positions on the committees that the bills you're concerned about are being heard on. I saw another question. Do committees amend bills? Oh, sorry. Do committees amend bills, or does the person who filed the bill? Committees amend bills. But you can also, it's both. So let's just say I have a bill heard in committee and I want to amend it because a stakeholder came to me and said, can you add this to your bill or fix this in your bill? As long as I file it 5 o'clock the night before, even if I'm not in the committee, I can still amend my own bill. But if I miss the deadline, I don't serve in that committee, another member can file an amendment as well. So it's both. Great question. Okay, so we already talked to Linda, had a great question again about other than the chair and vice chair for agendaing, is it worth contacting committee members that are not my representative? So I mean, I encourage folks to contact everyone, but if time is a scarcity for you, then I would not contact the other committee members of that committee unless the bill is scheduled and you're trying to influence their vote. But really just focus on chair and vice chair more than anything else. But if you have the capacity to email everyone, why not? But if you're tight on time, I would be strategic in that way. There are so many bills. How do you decide on priorities? I actually have a sign on my desk that says, it's a little comic strip that says, choose your battles. And the response is, I choose all of them. So I have to fight every battle that comes my way. I actually don't have a choice in priorities, but I would encourage everyday activists and advocates to prioritize as much as you can by focusing on issues that impact you the most, that you're driven towards, issues that impact your community, impacts that issues that maybe don't get a lot of attention that you feel like you could add more attention to. Really encourage folks to prioritize as much as you can, but it really just depends on what you feel like is most urgent and timely right now. Okay, what is the process for adding an amendment to the state constitution? Is it a better tactic with minority Democratic state Senate and House? Would it be better to submit a bill even if it won't pass to show independent voters that Republicans are voting against their best interest? Yes. Yes to all those questions. So we do file bills that will never get a hearing that are messaging tools, right? So I have a bill that I just filed for climate change. It's never going to get a hearing, but I file it to put a message out there and to mobilize the narrative around it. I'm also going to file a bill soon with Equality Florida that would repeal back a lot of the attacks on the LGBTQ plus community and repeal back the abortion ban. That bill is unlikely to pass, but it's another messaging tool. So we do file legislation to send a message to our greater constituents and to hopefully, you know, build a message around that and to inspire people to stand with us if they agree with us on those issues. When it comes to amending the state constitution, there's actually 3 ways to amend Florida's state constitution. That is, the legislature can put a question before the voters, and then you decide. Of course, there's a citizen-led ballot initiative, which was Amendment 3 and 4 last year, where signatures are collected and that's given to the voters. And then every 20 years, there's something called the CRC, the Constitution Review Commission, which is an appointed body that also provides proposed amendments for the voters to decide. In all 3 ways of amending the state constitution, you get a say as a voter. It has to be 60% to pass, regardless of how it came to the ballot. What is the likelihood of changing the citizen initiative process for bringing proposed constitutional amendments to the ballot? This is a battle we're preparing for. It's a great question. No bill has been filed yet, but as y'all know, Governor DeSantis basically wanted to eliminate the state ballot initiative question or option for voters. Eric had the same question actually. And so it's very important for us to be ready for that fight, which is why I taught y'all how to track bills and how to watch bills. But we are expecting for there to be a bill filed, either individual or out of a committee, that would attempt to make it more difficult for there to be citizen-led ballot initiatives like Amendments 3 and 4. So we will be fighting back against that, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. And state funds were directed and used for advertising on Amendment 3 and 4. Can monies be recovered? Unfortunately, a lawsuit was filed on that issue by the Amendment 4 organization, Floridians Protecting Freedom, Reproductive Freedom. But they ended up having to settle out of court because they did not have any more money. After the Amendment 4 campaign came to an end, the organization that was leading the lawsuit basically had to close because they didn't have any more money. So they settled on that lawsuit. And so at this point, there has not been any other lawsuit filed to attempt to hold the governor accountable for his use of public money for political campaigning, which is incredibly frustrating. But that is unfortunately the reality, is where you have so many other legal fights that need to be had and never any source of money to pay for those lawsuits. Okay, so Lisa asks, what's going on with reproductive rights? So unfortunately, Florida remains as a abortion ban state. We have a 6-week abortion ban in place right now in Florida. And so our emphasis has been on supporting abortion funds and organizations that are helping abortion seekers access care out of the state. It is a really awful situation, but there is no clear path in the legislature to eliminate the near total abortion ban. However, an abortion ban repealer will be filed, and we will obviously fight for it. But due to the makeup of the legislature, highly unlikely that such a bill would pass. So at this point, we are helping those who need an abortion leave the state of Florida to access care. And if you want to get more involved in that work, abortion funds are an excellent way to get plugged in. Need your love, need your support, need your resources. And they are severely overworked and underfunded. So I will actually drop in the chat Abortion Funds Florida, so that if you want to learn more about an abortion fund near you, this is a link that has all the current abortion funds in Florida. All right, so I'm gonna keep going down the list. How long does it take to get a bill passed? So legislative session is only 60 days long, so you have to pass the bill in that time frame. Here's a question from Martha in the chat. And the abortion pills, like New York doctor being extradited to LA, Texas, are they still legal here? No. Okay, great question. Abortion pills by mail have never been legal in Florida. Of course, the ability to track them is limited because it would require invasive use of force to your privacy rights. But technically, if you are mailing abortion pills into Florida, and if you're taking abortion pills without 24-hour mandatory delay, then you are breaking the law. So this is why it's really important to be aware of legal organizations like If, When, How, which provide pro bono legal support to abortion seekers. And so really want to make sure that's on everyone's radar. Another great organization that provides pro bono legal support to abortion seekers. And so I see a great question too coming at me directly about crosswalk. So I appreciate that. I have to keep running through the questions in front of me right now, but I appreciate this insight, Brian, that you're sharing with me about pedestrian safety. So I appreciate that. Okay. I'm going to move a little bit faster now because we're running out of time. So I'm going to grab some of the common questions if I can. Okay, how do we get our legislators to bring insurance affordability and accountability back to the forefront? Great question. What's really impactful is to force them, right? Contact them and say, why are you not talking about this issue? Why are you voting on a pride flag ban? You should be focused on addressing the property insurance crisis in Florida, writing letters to the editor, making videos on social media, like really put the pressure to highlight. I mean, it's the same thing with the fact that President Trump, nothing he's doing is going to lower the price of groceries. It's going to increase the price of groceries, right? And the more we say that and remind people that, the better. So really be as aggressive as possible and bringing the narrative back to the economy and highlighting how you're not helping with the economy. You're not doing anything to actually make our cost of living more reasonable. You're not increasing our wages. You are pursuing a corporate agenda to enrich your cronies. That's exactly what's happening right now. And unfortunately, a lot of folks might not know that. So we have to talk about it as much as we can. Okay, please discuss the open carry bill and likelihood of passing. Very upset about guns at schools and sporting events. This is crazy. Yes, so there's always a risk that more bills loosening gun laws will be passed. Florida already has some of the most loose gun laws in the country. And there is a chance for open carries, also a chance for legislation that would reduce the age to purchase firearms from 21 back to 18. And so we're watching for those bills right now. We'll keep you posted, of course, as they're if they progress forward, but very concerned about those bills, absolutely. And we'll let you know as they shift forward. Okay, Tom G asks, have you seen or expect any bills impacting our Florida veteran benefits? Absolutely. Actually, a lot of, I'm working with Representative Mike Redondo and Danny Alvarez, two Republican colleagues, on a veterans package to help strengthen veterans benefits in Florida, to help eliminate benefit sharks that specifically target veterans with their benefits. And so that is one of those great bipartisan issues that doesn't create much controversy that I really enjoy working on. So we will be working on strengthening veterans benefits and really trying to provide as much support as we can. Also to younger veterans, as a lot of folks obviously retire in Florida, but we have a lot of post 9/11 veterans that sometimes get overlooked. They don't have physical disabilities, they have invisible disabilities. So a lot of great work and conversations in that arena as well. Thank you, Winnie. I appreciate your good vibes. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate you too. Okay, we're at 7:30, y'all. I'm gonna see if I can I'm sorry to get to every question. Let me see if I can grab any other ones. Yes. Are you sponsoring a bill that expands citizens' homeowners insurance? I am. Great question. Anything happening in affordable housing? So more bills coming in that arena, including property insurance reform. The bill filing deadline is February 28th. So there'll be more bills filed, and we'll keep you posted as those bills get filed. TDT question. So we are going to be filing a few different TDT bills as well for tourism development tax. Let me see. We talked about the state ballot initiative. Yeah, property taxes. So if you were to cancel property taxes, it would be a huge hit to local governments, but it also is just really bad policy because you want to have different types of revenue generation, and not just revenue generation based on consumer activity. You want also income-based generation of revenue. Property taxes really is the only income-based tax we have in Florida. And so if you eliminate that and just focus on sales tax, because you have to replace it with something, you would see sales tax increase threefold, and then people would buy less, which would then impact revenue from sales tax. So eliminating property taxes completely is not good policy. Of course, I think there's plenty of conversation around exemptions for different groups of people. Trying to provide flexibility for veterans and so forth, but eliminating it completely is not smart economic policy. It sounds nice, but it's not good in its implementation. Okay, I'm also curious if there's increased efforts to eradicate trans people like me. Will it become more difficult to do basic things like name changes in the same way that is happening in gender marker changes and such? Great question, Fox. There has not been any bills filed yet, specifically targeting the trans community, but unfortunately, there is still time for those bills to get filed. So I suspect they will get filed, but we haven't seen anything filed yet. Of course, we are working with organizations like Southern Legal Counsel, which is led by Simone Chris, who's filing lawsuits challenging these policies. And then Maya Monet, who's one of my really good friends, and she leads an amazing trans support group via the LGBTQ plus Center of Orlando. And she's a fantastic advocate in this space. And I also provides not just a space for folks to talk through these challenges and attacks, but also, of course, link people to resources. So she's another amazing advocate in this space as well. Okay, yes. And then I saw Brian's question about sponsoring a bill regarding crosswalks. So I will definitely look into that, Brian. Thanks for uplifting that for us. I appreciate you. And then anything positive on climate change? Not really. I'm glad you're here though, Tom. So we filed our climate change bill. I also have a letter drafted to the PSC in opposition to FPL's rate hike request, which is going to be filed on February 28th. And I am hopeful for other lawmakers to sign that letter. I've sent it to be revised to some colleagues right now for their edits. So we will be fighting for affordable utilities and challenging FPL's rate hike. So we will be working on that as well. And then I don't want to pay for vouchers. What can I do? We got to vote. We got to challenge who our lawmakers are. And that's the only way it's going to change, Robin. Wish I had a better answer for you. How are most Democratic reps on nuclear power? Honestly, Pedro, I feel like there's just a huge lack of conversation on it. It's not something that comes up a lot in conversation. There's a huge gap of information about nuclear power. It's one reason why I started the Climate and Energy Caucus about 3 years ago to help educate lawmakers on energy policy, but it's definitely not something that's very discussed. So I don't know if there is a strong opinion either way. This is not something that we that comes up in conversation a lot. Okay, y'all. So it is 7:35. I think we did pretty well. We tackled a lot of your questions and walked you through the process. Yes, Leslie's talking about the Medicaid expansion petition. We are very involved in that initiative as well. So we'll make sure we share that link with everyone post this Zoom webinar. I really hope that everyone enjoyed the time we spent together. It was a fast 95 minutes. We covered a lot of great content. So I really appreciate you being a part of it. I hope you learned something in our time together. And I hope I got to as many questions as possible. For everyone who joined us, just know that your voice matters, your advocacy matters. I really appreciate you being here. I'm just looking through the comments I missed right now, and I appreciate all the good vibes. Florida Nurses Association has their day at the Capitol. I saw the dental hygienists have their day at the Capitol too. So we have a great combination of folks here with us tonight that range in their advocacy experiences. So we got to lean on each other, right? We only have each other to fight back. And so I really appreciate y'all being a part of this conversation. And yes, this recording will be should be on our Facebook page. It'll also be uploaded to a YouTube channel that we'll share with you so you can watch it later. And I'll also send you the slides as well. Thank you, Michael, for being here. It's good to see you, Michael. And then I do have like an action toolkit that I'm working on for Advocacy 101 in the legislature. I will also share that with you as well. And so with that, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for being a part of this. 140 of y'all stuck through it. So thank you for doing that. And more events to come. We have so many events coming up in the next 7 to 10 days before session starts. I shared a few of them already, but we have volunteer re-engagement events. We have voter registration, phone banking. We have our Orlando mayoral kickoff. We have 2 in-person town halls. We have the Democratic Mingle in College Park. So a lot of great ways to get plugged in. Of course, there are protests today. There'll be more protests as well. So stay connected. If you want to get more involved with Team Anna, we do have our volunteer newsletter that goes out every Sunday that lists all these events and more. So we'll make sure to email that out to everyone who attended our webinar today. So if you want to be a part of our email network, you could do so. And then during legislative session, we send a weekly legislative newsletter every week. I write it myself. And so if you're signed up for our emails, you'll also get that newsletter. It'll be posted as a blog post on our website too. So I try to make it as accessible as possible. Okay, with that said, I am about to lose my voice, so I'm gonna go hop on another meeting where I'm not talking as much, and I will see everyone very soon. Thanks so much again for your never-ending engagement. And for all of our first timers, I hope you had a good experience and that you're not feeling exhausted, that you're feeling empowered, because knowledge is power, and we need more people to join our work and help fight back. So with that, I appreciate y'all. Be well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.